So let's start at 7. Okay. I think I did the domain in red, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna try and contain this, right? So I know my x values are never gonna go less than -3, right? One thing you might not recognize, and I will ask you this, is that this is the graph of y. It's y squared equals x. So when you rearrange it, you kind of get the y equals plus minus root x thing, right? Which isn't a function, right? Because it doesn't pass the vertical line test, right? But its domain and range are, I know that the domain has to take on any x value. So it's XER such that x has to be greater than or equal to -3. Right? But the arms of this thing continue forever in both directions, positive and negative y, right? So my range piece, right? So that's just going to mean that the range is just going to be YER, right? Because it can take on any values of y. Okay. So any questions? That was all right. Okay. Again, it's not a function because it doesn't pass the vertical line test, right? But there's its domain and range, nonetheless. Okay. So 9, 10, 11, 12 are all very similar. I don't necessarily like this. I don't really like this. I think that's maybe saying that x could take on anything. Really, I don't really like that notation. Yeah, that's what it's saying. Okay, so I'll do that one in a sec. So this one here, though, what this wants you to do, and this goes for the bottom questions too. It's just the bottom questions are a different function. So you see, you got squareds and whatnot in here. That's the only difference, really. It tells you what the domain is, right? So the x values, and it wants to know what the y values are for each of those x's, right? And those y values are going to be the range, right? So if you do this, if I plug in, we'll pick one of the easy ones, like 3, okay? So I'll do this one here, right? -7 times 3 plus 3 is going to equal to -21 plus 3, which is equal to -18, right? So that would be one of the range values, right? I just continue doing that for each of these until I got them all, right? And then I would list them. So the range would be, it would just have the number from -12, right? So I'll list it. This is what I like about function notation, right? I can write this and we all kind of know what it means. I don't need to actually do it, right? And then it's going to be f at -4, and then f at 3, which was -18, right? And then f at 20. Let's give you your range. And you're just going to do that for all of them, right? So each one of these, you're just going to take each of the x values, so you're going to plug it into the function for x, and you're going to get out the range values, right? The y's. And then you can just list them the exact same way that the domain is listed, right? Now, if you recall, we talked about, this isn't necessarily the clearest way to write the domain, but what this is saying is that, like, this equation here is what? What shape does that give you? That's just y equals mx plus b, right? Which you should know from what lesson we're on. It might be the actual lesson we talked about what the domain and range were for a line, right? There weren't any really restrictions on it. So what this is saying is that x can take on any value. It's just their way of writing it. So basically,
So you put any number in?
yeah. That's equivalent to what they've written there. So then the range, I know that the range for a line has to be, right? So that's 11. And then 12 is a little bit more complicated, but remember what 12 was. 12 looks like this. It's a parabola, right? So then when I contained my parabola, I knew it that the x values could go on forever in both directions, right? Which is why this has the domain that it does, right? That's just the domain is any real number. And then you have to do this, I suppose, what might be a little bit tricky is for you to figure out where the minimum point is from this, right? So you just have to plug in values to find, or go plot it on Desmos, right? You can use Desmos. Plot this, right, on Desmos and see what it spits out. It's going to give you a parabola of some sort, right? I know its y-intercept is 11, right? So it's going to give you something. I know it's opening up, right? So it's going to give you some shape of graph like this. So it's going to have a minimum value. And then you know how to do that, right? Then the range is going to look like this. It's YER, right? Because it can take on any value of R, but it's such that Y has to be greater than some value, whatever that value is, the minimum, right? So this point here, whatever it looks like, it's going to be that value, right? It has to be greater than that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you can plot that one on Desmos, okay? This one here, a little bit trickier. Can I draw a box around this one? Like, is there anywhere I can draw x's that contain it? No, right? So it's going to continue going in both directions forever. So then I know the domain is a part of the real numbers, right? And then I obviously can't contain its y values, right? It's going as well. Right? So it's going forever in both directions as well. Okay? And then I think you guys could do the other ones, right? You feel better with the other ones now? The same questions, right? They're flipping the slopes negative on this one. This one's opening down now because of the negative sign, which we will do today. That's kind of where we're headed. So if you don't know that, that's okay. That's where we're headed, okay? That's about it. Is it okay? Yeah.
So for the questions like number 9 that have the domain like plot points, so you like would input those into the function, and then for like 12 where it's just like x is like endless, you just like write out the bracket x b I r.
Yeah.
Bracket.
That's just like if I gave you this on the test, I would write this. I wouldn't. I don't necessarily like. I've never seen that before. This is just like their way of doing it, right? Their software. This where you get these sheets, these extra practice sheets. That's just their way of writing x is a part of the real numbers, right? Which you can. I didn't know what that was until I like actually sat and thought, right? You can kind of deduce what that means by looking at what the function is, right? I see y equals mx plus b. I know there's no restrictions on the domain, right? So then I can deduce what that actually means, right? But I won't do that. I'll give it to you that looks like that on the test or whatever, right? Okay. So the other